What does it take to find success self-publishing your book? Hi there, my name is Brian Collins and welcome to the Become a Writer Today channel. Hope you like the content in this video where I'll talk all about my experiences self-publishing and give you some practical tips which you could use to become an indie author. And if you like the content in this video, hit thumbs up. And if you want to get more videos like this or about the craft of writing, please subscribe to the channel. So for years, I've always wanted to write a book. I always thought it'd be quite difficult to do, because I'd write a book and then how was I going to find an agent and much less find a book publisher who would take my book and publish it for me. In 2014, I discovered self-publishing and I actually wrote a 10,000 word guide to using Twitter, and I prepared the book and got ready to self-publish it on Amazon. But I didn't publish the book because I didn't want to be the guy who wrote an instruction manual about Twitter, but I was still hooked on the idea of self-publishing. And since then, I've self-published 6 or 7 different books. And I've recently self-published my new book, which is called I Can't Believe I'm a Dad. Now, I like self-publishing for a couple of different reasons. Firstly, it puts you in control of your own creative destiny. In other words, you don't need to rely on an agent or a book publisher. You can write a book and see it through to conclusion and then get it in front of readers. Secondly, self-publishing allows for print on demand. So if you write a book, you don't need to order hundreds or thousands of copies and try and sell them. Through self-publishing, you can just upload your digital files and reach readers around the world without owning any physical stock. The third reason why I like self-publishing is it's a fantastic way of connecting with a different audience to writing blog posts or even recording videos like this one, because books have more of a sense of permanency than a blog post, which could be updated or lose rankings in Google, or even a video which may date over time. I still get emails from readers about books I've written several years ago, and I'm always surprised when I get these emails because my reaction is, I wrote this book a few years ago, that part of my life was kind of over, and to the reader it's something that they've just read or engaged with. But I do reply to the emails, but that's probably an experience that many self-published authors have. That is, getting emails from readers for a project they spent time on years ago and have forgotten about. Now, with that said, let's get into 11 actionable tips which you can use to find success as a self-published author. Tip number 1, don't publish junk. A couple of years ago, there was a gold rush into self-publishing. Many nefarious actors published cheap, knockoff books on Amazon hoping to make a quick buck. They even took books that were in the public domain, slapped a cover on it, published it, and hoped that they'd earn money from unsuspecting readers. They didn't care about formatting or typos or a professional product that readers would enjoy. So if you want to become an author, it's natural to feel impatient about getting your book out into the world. But I'd say to you to take a little bit of extra time and care with your book. No, don't put it off for months or years, but do improve the quality of your manuscript. Do spend a bit more time on editing and preparing something that you're happy to publish. Because a book follows you around a lot longer than an article or a video. A book will often appear if someone searches for your name in Google, and a book is something that people will read and ask you about. So if you want to create a professional product and become a professional author, then invest care, time and attention into your book rather than rushing to press publish. Tip number 2, hire an editor. I trained as a journalist years ago when I was in my 20s. Wasn't a very good journalist, but I thought I knew a little bit about editing. So when I wrote my first book, which was a guide to productivity for authors, I figured I'd edit it myself because I was a journalist and I could easily edit a book. How wrong I was. Although I was able to fix some mistakes and issues in the book, when I self-published it, I started getting emails from readers. At first I was happy to get emails from any readers, but they started pointing out typos and mistakes in the book. And I even got a few bad book reviews. What did I do? I took the book down and I rewrote it, and then I hired an editor to fix all of the mistakes. I would have saved myself a lot of stress and a lot of pain if I'd done this at the start of the process. So you should budget to work with an editor for your book. Depending on the quality of your manuscript, you may need a developmental editor who will look at the overall structure of the book. You may need a copy editor who will fix individual lines in the book, and you may need a proofreader who will fix typos, grammar and spelling mistakes. Now, you can get an editor who will do all of these things, so agree with your editor up front what service you want them to provide for you. Typically, you'll pay between $1,000 and $2,000 for an editor, and you can use a service like Readsy to find one. But an editor is a key part of your product, and it's also worthwhile to work with an editor because they'll help you understand parts of the craft of writing that you can use for your next creative project. My next tip is to hire a book cover designer. So your book cover is how readers see what your book looks like, and it's also what convinces them to buy. And often the book cover has to sell the book more than the book itself. Don't try to knock up a book cover yourself. That's what I tried to do as well, so I've made a lot of mistakes. I took a course in Adobe Photoshop and I spent a couple of months taking the course, and at the end of the course I said to myself, I'm going to save myself a couple $100 and design my own book cover. I thought I'd be able to follow an online tutorial in one night. It actually took me about 3 weeks to complete the tutorial. I was kind of happy with the results, but then when I compared my results to what was in Amazon for this particular genre, it didn't look like any of the other books on Amazon. So eventually I just went ahead and commissioned a book cover designer on 99 designs. I should have done this up front because I would have saved myself a couple of dozen hours of work, and I could have used that time to edit the book, to improve the quality of the manuscript, or even to write something else. So unless you have a really particular skill set, chances are you are a writer, not a designer. So budget for a designer and work with them to create something that represents your best book. Now, if you're really on a budget, you can buy a pre-made book cover for $100 or $200. If you have more of a budget, you can buy a professional book cover for approximately $1,000 or so. But do factor this in, because your book is an asset, and even though it's a bit of money to pay up front to get ready for self-publishing, you will earn this back over time, hopefully. And I'm going to talk about that in a moment. My third tip is to use book formatting software or work with a book layout designer. You can do either, but don't just take a Word manuscript and publish it into Amazon, because it'll be a terrible reading experience for your readers. You need to make sure the headings and subheadings are formatted correctly, that any citations and so on have the correct links, and that your book generally looks good and is visually appealing both in print and in Kindle and whatever format you're using. The book cover designs, or the book design software that I use the most, is Vellum. So I write my books in Scrivener, work with an editor, edit them in Scrivener, export to Vellum. It takes me about an hour to lay out the book and get it ready for self-publishing, and then I'll sometimes check it by sending it to a friend to have a look at, or I'll order myself author copies and go through what it looks like, and I've been reasonably happy with the results. Unfortunately, Vellum is Mac only, and I know not every author likes using Vellum, so you can work with a book layout designer as well, who will help you get your book ready before you're going to publish it on Amazon. But do consider this an important part of the process of becoming a professional indie self-published author. My next tip for indie authors is to budget for marketing. So if you're going to market your book and you want to sell copies of your book, you can't just rely on Amazon to do it for you. Years ago, during the gold rush, that was possible. Amazon would just send out an email saying this book is live, and loads of people would flock in and buy it, or people would just browse on the Amazon store out of novelty and they would just type in the name of a book and yours would appear and you'd magically get sales. Unfortunately, it's not so easy these days. You need to promote your own book, and often that means doing things like Facebook ads and Amazon ads. I've tried a couple of different approaches. Here's what's worked and not worked for me. I write non-fiction and I've had less success with Facebook ads, but that's because I don't like using Facebook. I've had more success with Amazon ads because readers are already on Amazon, so it makes sense for Amazon authors or for readers to buy on Amazon when they're on Amazon. That said, Amazon ads have gotten more competitive over the last year or two. I gather more publishers are using it. So email marketing is a fantastic way of promoting your book. So if you have an email list, you can ask readers to buy your book. You can also do things like guest podcasting, blogging, and content creation. All of these strategies can help you sell more copies of your book. And remember, writing a book can take many weeks, if not many months. So don't think of your book as something that happens on a given week and you have to get a certain amount of sales. Instead, it's far better to do one activity every day or every week that promotes your book and then look at the sales over the long term. What do I mean by long term? Over the last 3, 6, 12 and 24 months. So while you might not return or earn a return on your book straight away, you could earn a return on your book if you consider things over the long term. My next tip for you builds on marketing for your book, and that's to include a call to action in your book. A call to action is basically a term from the world of copywriting, and it's basically when you ask the reader to act or to do something. In your case, you're going to ask the reader to join your email list. You'll include a call to action at the start of your book that says, to get more great books from whatever your name is, please visit my site at XXX. And then you could potentially give them a free book to encourage opt-ins. The idea is that you're encouraging readers to read your book, or even people who just download the sample, to read the sample and then go through to your website, get something for free, and join your email list. And then you can start to build or nurture a relationship with them over time. And then when you have a new book out or when your book is on sale, you can email all of your readers and say, go buy this now, and here's why I think you'll like it. And this is often a lot cheaper and easier than relying on advertising and also relying on an algorithm when the rules can change. Because ultimately a book is a single creative project, whereas if you want to become a professional author, you have to build a career, and an email list is a tool for doing just that. The tool I use for my email list is ConvertKit. Other popular options exist like ActiveCampaign and MailChimp, but I like ConvertKit because it's created by a former author for people who are into creating digital products, including books. Next tip for you is don't expect success with one book. I've interviewed dozens of non-fiction authors over the years and dozens of fiction authors for my podcast, To Become a Writer Today podcast. I wanted to figure out how many of them are earning a full-time living from writing. Here's what I found out. With a few notable exceptions, like Andy Weir, the author of The Martian, most indie authors don't make a full-time living or killing on their first book. They rely on a deep back catalogue. Just the other day I was interviewing a non-fiction author who wrote a book in the 1990s, and something came up in the news about that was related to a topic in her book, and suddenly her book shot up the charts and she was surprised by the royalties. So if you have a deep back catalogue, if you have dozens of books, or if you have lots of different stories that you've published, you'll stand a far better chance of earning a return from your book. If all of this can sound like a lot of work, also remember that many authors have other parts of their system that they earn a living from. What do I mean by this? Well, some of the non-fiction authors I've talked to rely on public speaking, affiliate marketing, they create courses and so on that support their book. While some fiction authors will also do things like speaking in public, they will also do things like creating different versions of their book to connect with readers. So one book isn't going to be quit your job money, but if you have an ecosystem of creative products, then you may be able to do it full time, and then you can take this money and invest it back in to your craft and deliver more value to your readers. My next tip is to think outside of Amazon Kindle. Amazon can seem all-encompassing, and it's certainly the platform that I use the most for self-publishing. But readers are on more platforms than Amazon. You can also look at other platforms like Apple, like Ingram Spark if you want to get your book into bookstores, and also onto Kobo Life and Google. Using these different services will help you connect with different types of readers in different parts of the world. Thinking outside of the Kindle also frees you up from being overly reliant on the Amazon algorithm. So I'd encourage you to consider selling direct once you have an email list. You can use a service like PayHip to do just that. You can create your own digital bookstore. I did this, it took me about 20 minutes. I uploaded my files and I delivered them to readers using BookFunnel, which is another service for authors. And the great thing about selling direct is you get all of the royalties. With Amazon, you get approximately 70% of the royalties. And if you get a traditional deal, I understand it's less than 30 or 20%. So do think outside of Amazon Kindle once you've written more than one book or once you've built that all-important back catalogue. My next tip for you is to create an audiobook. So just yesterday, I spent 4 hours recording the final part of my audiobook for I Can't Believe I'm a Dad. The whole project took a lot longer than I expected. I went to a recording studio near where I live, and for 3 hours every Wednesday, I recorded chapters from the book, and then I re-recorded parts based on what the audio engineer said needed to be fixed. Investing in audiobooks has proven really profitable for me over the years. Audiobooks, particularly if you write non-fiction, can often earn more than fiction and are an easier sell. I've followed a couple of different approaches. I've hired a studio, which I just talked about there. Previously, I've hired professional narrators using Audible ACX. I've had mixed results with that, so you do need to vet the narrators before you hire them. And previously, I've narrated an audiobook in a home office just like this when I really didn't have much money and I just had to do it on a shoestring. So you don't need to go out and hire a studio for your first audiobook, but do ask yourself, how could I turn my book into an audiobook? Because somebody who reads a Kindle book is somebody different to who listens to it on audio, and again also somebody different to who might like to enjoy the print version. So create multiple versions of your book, and that will help you increase your income and become a more professional, successful author. And that's what many professional, traditional authors do, so it should be the same for you. My final tip, if you want to become a successful self-published author, is to write the next one. Writing one book is fantastic. It's a great achievement, and you shouldn't spend so much time working on a book that you never press publish. Ultimately, you have to release a book out into the world to get feedback. Even if that feedback is negative reviews or crickets, don't let that put you off. Start writing the next book, because the best way to sell the last book is to write the next one. The other thing I found from writing several different books is it gets you to improve at your craft. So when I wrote my first book, I was delighted because I was able to write a book. A couple of years later, I went back and reread it, and I said, that wasn't very good. There were things in that book I would fix or that I wouldn't say. And that's because I've spent more time writing books, so my knowledge of the craft has improved a little. So I've got different standards for what I expect from a book today. It'll be the same for you. You may be happy with your first book, but by the time you get to your sixth book, you will look back and say, I can't believe how far I've come as an author. Writing your next book is also key if you want to explore different niches and different genres. Because often as writers, we can live a lot in our heads. We can have all of these ideas for stories or non-fiction books. But it's only when you sit down and try to write one that you figure out, is this something that is a book or an article or a course? So start the next one today. Because I always say, frame it like this to new authors. If you write 150 words a day or 300 words a day for 7 days, that's approximately 2,000 to 3,000 words a week. Could take Sunday off. And I say 3,000 because some days you'll probably go a bit over. If you do that for 4 weeks or 4.5 weeks, you will have 10 to 15,000 words. That's enough for the first act of your book. Keep doing that for 3 months and you'll have a 3-act book. Sure, it'll be rough. Sure, it'll be a first draft, but that'll be enough for you to send to an editor and get feedback on your manuscript. Now, if you continue to do that for book after book and do this for year after year, you'll easily build up a body of work and earn a living as a self-published author. There you go. Those are my tips that will help you find success self-publishing based on my experiences self-publishing a couple of books over the years. If you enjoyed the content in this video, if you want to get more self-publishing advice, or you've got questions, just let me know in the comments section below. And if you want to get more videos like this, please subscribe to the channel. And finally, if you like this video, then I think you'll like this one next.